accomplished evangelist to the campus. And I got a chance to meet with him personally. And he sat me down and he said to me, he looked me in the eye and he said, let me be alone with any person in this world for 15 minutes. And I'll get you a decision for Jesus Christ. When I listened to him for 15 minutes, I believed him. I thought anybody will do anything and say anything to get away from you after 15 minutes. This man didn't understand the first thing about evangelism. He didn't understand the first thing about the gospel. He didn't understand that you and I are powerless to bring anybody to faith. We may be able to encourage people to make professions of faith. And this is one of the things where we are so zealous to get people converted that we'll say to them, I'm calling you now to get up out of your chair wherever you are and you come down here to this altar. And I call you now. Stand up and come. Or I may say to you, you don't need to come to the altar, but bow your head, and if you want to receive Christ, just raise your hand. Or there are cards there in front of you, and they have the sinner's prayer. And if you would just silently read the sinner's prayer and sign your name, you can be saved. Now, don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm not against altar calls. I'm not against raising your hand. I'm not against calling people to commit their lives to Jesus. God forbid. Here's what I'm deeply concerned about, is that we mistake professions of faith for salvation. Anybody can make a profession of faith. We are not justified by the profession of faith. If we are justified, we're justified by the possession of faith. And if we have faith, we're called to profess it. But Jesus warns us time after time that not everybody who says to me, Lord, Lord, is going to come into my kingdom. He says, this people honors me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. And so critical to evangelism is how the objective benefits of the atoning death and resurrected life of Jesus Christ can be appropriated by me personally in my life. And what the New Testament teaches about that is that the good news is that I receive the benefits of Jesus Christ. I receive the full measure of his perfect merit. Not by any work that I can ever perform, because by the works of the law shall no flesh ever be justified. And the good news, Paul speaks here in verse 17, for in it, the gospel, the righteousness of God is revealed from faith to faith. Luther was preparing his lectures on Romans at Wittenberg, and while he was poring over an ancient document from St. Augustine, Augustine commented on this verse, and he said, here, when Paul speaks of the righteousness of God, he's not talking about that righteousness by which God himself is righteous. Rather, he's speaking of an alien righteousness. A righteousness that he freely gives to people who are not righteous. A righteousness that is received by faith, and by faith alone. You can't earn it. You can't deserve it. You can't work for it. You can only receive it. And you receive the good news of the gospel by trusting in Christ by faith, and by faith alone, with no mixture of your own works. Now that's the gospel in its full simplicity, which has been altered, distorted, and improved in every generation of Christian history. We completely went into eclipse in the Middle Ages, where a whole different system of salvation was constructed by the church, which church in the 16th century condemned the gospel of justification by faith alone. Let's go now back quickly to Galatians, where that passage I read to you involves some of the strongest language that you ever read from the pen of the Apostle Paul, if you read the epistles of Paul, you can't miss the fact that Paul's heart was the heart of a pastor. Paul just exuded compassion for the sheep of Jesus Christ. He endured unspeakable affliction and pain for the welfare of the people into the churches. Paul never manifests himself as being mean-spirited or harsh. But here, he gets exercised. He begins by announcing what I call apostolic astonishment. In chapter 1 of Galatians, verse 6, he said, I marvel. I'm amazed. About what? That you are turning away so soon from him who called you in the grace of Christ. And it wasn't just that they were turning away from something, but in that turning away, they were turning away to something. And what it was they were turning away to, the apostle writes, was to a different gospel. And then he corrects himself, as it were, which is not another. I use these words, people think that there's another gospel. They think they can improve upon the gospel. They think they can edit the gospel. They think that they can change the gospel and move to another gospel, but there is no other gospel. There's only one gospel. God's gospel. Now here's where he really, really turns up the heat. But if we or an angel from heaven, listen to this, if we or an angel from heaven preach any other gospel to you than what we have preached to you, let him be anathema. No stronger word in the Greek. Let him be anathema. Let him be damned. Let the curse of God come upon anyone who preaches any other gospel than the one that you have received from the apostles. Even if it's an angel from heaven.
Nothing but the truth.